morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, August 26, 2016. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, first question for you here on the show. A hot topic on the board is, what are reasonable expectations for Nick Bosa? Obviously, I've heard people say at the same stage in high school he was better than Joey. We know how great Joey was, but the caveat there is that, Nick had the torn ACL his senior year in high school, and even though he's been medically cleared, Urban Meyer himself says they're trying to be slow with him right now. He's going to play, but looking at the season as a whole, not necessarily the first 4 games or whatever when they're going to take it slow on him, but what are your expectations for Nick Bosa this season?
Well, you made the very salient point that his knee was messed up last November or December. That's not a long turnaround. I think we have to keep that in mind. I think Nick Bosa is going to play. I think over his career, Nick Bosa is going to be a extremely good player for the Buckeyes. But let's remember a couple things here. One, his older brother was a player who we compared with Will Smith as being the best defensive end at Ohio State in the last 20 years. All right? In fact, they're the only two that you can really have a discussion about. So that's an incredibly unfair level of expectation for Nick Bosa, particularly as a freshman coming off a knee injury. Second here, let's be real honest. There's a lot of depth in everything. When Joey was a freshman, Joey forced his way on the field. But Joey wasn't necessarily behind two guys like Sam Hubbard and Tyquan Lewis. So I think you have to temper your expectations with Nick Bosa a little bit. He's going to play. The second half of the year, I think he could be quite effective. Let's not forget that the other top backup of the defensive end, Jalen Holmes, hasn't really proven much yet. So I have expectations for Nick Bosa to be a solid player this year. I don't expect him to start really breaking out as a star player, at least until next season. But the expectation level by the end of his career for him to be an elite player is certainly there.
A player I don't think we need to temper our expectations about is J.T. Barrett, now a fourth-year junior, finished 5th for the Heisman 2 years ago. Question for you, this was asked to me in my chat yesterday. Will J.T. Barrett go over or under 3,000 passing yards this year, Bax?
Well, that's a loaded question for one very simple reason. If J.T. Barrett only plays 13 games this year, being the regular season in a bowl game, that makes it far more difficult in terms of average yards per game. Whereas, say, J.T. Barrett plays 14 or 15 games, I find it extremely likely he breaks over the 3,000 yards for the season. That's just the averages in place there. So the question really isn't, do you think J.T. Barrett's going to throw for 3,000 yards? The question is, do you think the Buckeyes are going to make the playoffs? Do you think they're going to win the Big Ten? Do you think they're going to play for the national championship? So here's the thing with JT. I think JT's going to have a lot of games this year where he throws for 210, 220 yards. You're going to see that fairly consistently from him. But you also have to remember JT's going to run the ball a lot. Ohio State's going to have a lot of games this year where they jump out to a 35-7 lead in the second quarter, and JT's not going to really need to throw the ball much. And maybe he'll be out by the third quarter. There's a few Big Ten games you look at this year where JT's not going to be in much in the second half. Fingers crossed, of course. So I'm going to say yes, but I'm going to say yes because I'm the hopeless optimist who looks at this Buckeye team and sees 2014 Part 2 coming down the line with a more experienced quarterback. So let's go with over 3,000, and if the Buckeyes make the playoffs, that's over 3,000 with a bullet.
Yeah, I went over 3,000. He was so close 2 years ago. He had 2,834 yards 2 years ago, and and that was only playing 12 games, and really, 11 games in 3 quarters. So I think he's going to do it this year, even if they only, quote unquote, play 13 games. If he stays healthy, plays 13 games or more, I think he's going to get over 3,000 yards passing. And they are making a much more, it's a huge emphasis of camp for those that are wondering. I mean, Ohio State finished 100th in the country in passing offense last year. It's an embarrassing stat. They were 11th in rushing offense, but that balance is terrible. So they're trying to be much more balanced. I still think they're going to be, lean more toward the run than the pass, but they're hoping to be more 60-40 than, whatever they were last year. I think Urban's saying they want to be 55-45 backs, but, I think 60-40 rushing passing is probably more realistic. I think that'd be a fine balance for this team. So we'll see what happens, but I'm going to go over. Hey, it's been a bad week for the Maize and Blue. Go.
What a great week. I don't know what bad week you're talking about. I've enjoyed myself. Oh, man. So let's start off with
them. I said bad week for them, not for anybody in Columbus, Ohio.
I can tell you we've had a great week here in the Buckeye State. It has been just wonderful and peachy. Where to start? Let's start here. 4 stars galore leaving that school up north, because they don't know who half these kids are who aren't going to barbecues. They had a top kid from Georgia decommit because the coaching staff thanked him for going to the, barbecue in the outhouse, and it turns out he didn't even go. Couldn't even spell his name right. Can you imagine that? That is just the top of the heap, really, in terms of coaching ineptitude. Then, of course, there's Leonard Taylor, who many of us have believed for a very long time is inevitably going to end up as a Buckeye. And I think the decommitment from him here was thoroughly unsurprising. And I don't think he's going to necessarily be a Buckeye next week, but he's going to end up a Buckeye. And there goes the only really notable Ohioan Harbaugh has recruited yet his entire tenure. So nothing's changed on that front. And if you know the history of this rivalry, if they can't steal kids from us in Ohio, they don't beat us on the field. That's simple. The times that they won games in this rivalry after 1950, because before then, let's face it, it barely counts, then the only time they win games in this rivalry is when they beat Ohio State in recruiting in Ohio. So, yeah, they're not doing that, and you can continue to expect the results of the field to reflect that fact. Let's see here. Oh, then there's Amir Mitchell, another former 4-star kid. In fact, he was a kid who Ohio State looked really hard at before letting him go to Michigan last year. I actually interviewed him at Friday Night Lights. He's a good player. Well, he just left their team because of some sort of disciplinary suspension issue that Harbaugh wouldn't talk about. You have to start wondering how many kids are going to pull Amir Mitchell when they get there and realize Harbaugh isn't the crazy kooky guy who sleeps over at your house and climbs trees and everything when he's recruiting you, but it's actually a bona fide nut job. Well, you're going to see more of these kids doing this going forward. And I'm just not shocked at all. And by the way, Harbaugh is already going off the deep end. They interview him and ask him, hey, why are these suspended kids on the team picture? And he loses his stuff and stalks off. All they have to do is go, it's a team matter, and they broke some team rules. The end. But no, Harbaugh lost it and canceled his press conference. So maybe he's feeling the pressure that's being heaped on him. Maybe he's shifting back into full-fledged bad San Fran Harbaugh, which I don't think really went away. And in the end, now you've got a team of that school up north who sort of seems like they're unraveling off the field. And on the field, they still don't have a quarterback. So, it's been a pretty good week, I think. And by the way, to top it all off, pick up your phone and start typing in Harbaugh, and you'll see the autocorrect option is garbage. So that really made me laugh really hard this week.
I did see you post that on the board, or maybe it was in your column, The Bucket, which everybody can catch on Sunday. Shameless plug there for subscribers. If you're not subscribed to our buy 1 month, get 1 month free, you can read Bax's column every Sunday and all the other good things that come with being a subscriber. All right, final question, and I'm assuming your answer is not going to be Jim Harbaugh. Who is the third best head coach in the country? I think, college football fans might not agree on a lot, but I think in whatever order, most college football fans would agree Urban Meyer and Nick Saban are the top 2 coaches in the country. So I posted this question on the board yesterday. What is your take? Who is the third best head coach in the country, Bax?
Well, first of all, I agree with your premise. It's Urban and Saban and then everybody else, and there's a gap. Number 3 is clearly not Jim Harbaugh, by the way. I think there's only a few candidates you can really put in this position right now. I think Jimbo Fisher has to be in the discussion because he's won a national championship recently and has done a lot of good at Florida State for a while. I think Dabo Swinney has to be in the discussion because he turned Clemson into a team that actually wins games instead of blowing them in spectacular fashion. But if I have to pick the number 3 coach in the country, my pick is going to be Mark D'Antonio because right now Michigan State is being talked about as an elite program. Michigan State has won 11 or more games in 5 out of 6 seasons. And Michigan State is, remember, Michigan freaking State. All right, Clemson has won national championships before. Florida State was obviously a powerhouse for years upon years. Michigan State 10 years ago with John L. Smith screaming about his coaches blowing it for the kids at halftime at Ohio Stadium, blowing leads to Notre Dame. I mean, Sparty No was a big thing. Oh, no, Sparty's going to blow it again. How much do we talk about that? 10 years ago, Michigan State was Illinois. And now Michigan State is a team that just made the college football playoff, has won 3 Big Ten championships under D'Antonio. To me, what D'Antonio did at a program that is not a historical blue-blooded program is maybe the most impressive thing in the last 10 years in college football outside of Nick Saban winning 4 national championships in 7 years. So my pick for the third best coach in the country is Mark D'Antonio because not only of what he's succeeded with doing on the field, but where he's done it. To me, if you had told me 10 years ago Michigan State was a team that we'd be talking about as a consistent top 10 elite kind of team that maybe isn't getting the respect it deserves despite the fact they've won 11 out of 12 games, or 11 games in 5 out of 6 years, I mean. To me, that's just that is such a change from where Michigan State was. I can't put it into words for those who really are just new to college football or have only started paying a lot of attention the last 5-10 years. Recruits look at Michigan State like recruits in the 90s looked at Michigan. I mean, it's incredible what he's done. And so for that reason alone, D'Antonio is my number 3 coach.
Thanks very much to the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell, and thanks to the listeners out there. I hope everyone has a great day and a great weekend. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.